Okay, hi Addie. Guess what? I am going to do my best to record this today, but as you can tell, my voice is not that great. So hopefully my voice hangs in there. I'm sorry that you have to listen to my terrible voice, but I will try and make this short and we will figure it out, okay? Here we go. Today's lesson, we are going to talk about multiple symbols of inclusion. So now that you have mastered a set of symbols of inclusion, kind of like parentheses and brackets, we're going to talk about what do you do when there's multiple ones of those in an equation. Then we're going to talk a little bit more on order of operations. And then there are some really cool rules on products of signed numbers. So that means what happens when we multiply a negative by a negative and stuff like that, okay? But first of all, let's do this little guessing game. Is it a parent or is it a serial killer? Guess. Someone that collects teeth and locks of hair. Ooh, watches you while you sleep. Okay, take pictures of hands and feet. Says creepy eternal love phrases. We'll be together forever. Okay, I have to admit I've probably done some of those things to you, so I'm not a serial killer. So I'm just a parent. It could be either one though. That's kind of funny. All right, let's jump into the lesson. Multiple symbols of inclusion. So we're going to start with this. So a lot of times we have an equation where we have parentheses and brackets. So when you have an equation that has multiple symbols of inclusion, what you're going to do is you're going to do a Jack Black. You are going to find the nucleus. The nucleus is the innermost center of the equation, okay? So I kind of think of it as the nucleus. It's not really, but that's just how I like to think of it. So I find the symbol of inclusion that is the most inner, and I start there and work outward from there. For example, this one, we would start with these parentheses because they're the most in the middle. To do this, I'm going to start with negative 2 minus 4. Once I have that, I'm going to do the next set of symbols of inclusion. So I'll do the minus 3. After that, I do order of operations. This looks like we're going to multiply that to the answer of the bracket. So I would do that first before I take away 2 at the end. Let's try it. We're going to do example 13.1. Here we go. Remember to find the Jack Black in you, and we'll find a nucleus in the center of this. So here we go. This is the big, long thing that we have to figure out. All right. Okay, I'm just answering a text really quick, and I have to do that because it's one of my residents. So here we go. Now, this one is interesting because it looks like there are 2 nucleuses or 2 nuclei. And indeed there are. You've got parentheses here. Then you have brackets outside of that. And the last thing is you have these braces. So we're going to start with the 2 nuclei. If there are 2, which one do you do first? Doesn't matter. Let's do them both. Okay? So I'm going to start with this one. This is negative 3 plus a negative 2. So that's going to simplify to negative 5. I'm going to keep that in the parentheses for now. Then I'm going to do the second nucleus. Negative 7 plus 4, that's going to be negative 3. Now everything else, I'm just going to bring it on down. Bring it on down. You are the next contestant on The Price is Right. Now I can kind of see what we have to do next. We still have the 2 nucleuses or the 2 nuclei, but we can see now that what we need to do is multiply these 2 things together because there's nothing in between. So we're just going to multiply them together. Now we're going to find out in a minute that when we multiply 2 negatives, we end up with a positive. But for now, I'm going to assume that you know that. Negative 5 times negative 3 is a positive 15. Now everything else, I'm going to bring it on down. Bring it on down. Okay. Yep, just like that. All right. Now you'll see that, don't look down here yet. It'll distract you. Okay. Now then there's a new nucleus in town. The new nucleus is this one, 15 minus 5. So to save space, I'm just going to erase that and put a 10. Now there's another new nucleus. This is the next nucleus, the next layer, I guess I should say. And these two numbers we multiply together, 2 times 10. So I'm going to erase that and put 20 here. Then I'm going to bring all of this in. Now I can see what I need to do next. Since these are right next to each other, there's nothing in between, not a minus sign, not a plus sign, nothing. That means I multiply these together. So 4 times 20, 20, 40, 60, 80. 80 minus 2, and the answer is going to be 78. All right, let's make sure that I got the same answer as in the book. And indeed I did. All right, that's perfect. I love that when I get the same answer as the book. Then I know they're right. Every once in a while the book gets something wrong, so you have to always check their work. Alrighty, let's do example 13.2. Now this one is even more interesting. You knew that they were going to take this to the next level because there's a super complicated thing on top and a super complicated thing on the bottom. So we have to find the nucleus of the top and then find the nucleus of the bottom. Okay, so the nucleus of the top is this. Negative because, why? Because there's brackets, but that's not the nucleus because there's also brackets here. And there's parentheses still on the inside of those brackets. So this is the nucleus. We'll start with negative 2 plus a negative 3. That makes negative 5. So I'm just going to write it like that, just so I can keep things straight. Here we have 4 minus 2. That's the nucleus of the bottom. 4 minus 2 is an easy math problem. It's just 2. Okay, now what's the next nucleus of the top? It's going to be negative 5 times negative 2. And the answer there is going to be a positive 10. I'm going to erase all of that because I just did that and make it a positive 10. Now I'm going to bring this in. And this, the bottom, I can just simplify that now because it's negative 3 times 2. So that's going to be negative 6. All right. Now, let's just simplify the top and do that math problem. So we have negative 3 times 10. The answer is going to be negative 30 over negative 6. Those two negatives cancel out. Why does it cancel out? Kind of because it's like having a negative 1, and you can just cancel those out. So now we just do 30 divided by 6, and we get 5. Positive 5. And positive 5 is the answer, and the book got the same thing. So now that we've done a couple of problems that used negatives and positives multiplied and divided, let's figure out those. Oh, actually, first we're going to do order of operations. So I simplified this more on order of operations. You know this, so I'm going to breeze through it really quickly. Whatever, right? So remember, when you see something like this problem, 4 times 3 added to 2, add 2, that means that a bunch of nerds got together and decided that the thing we should do first is multiplication. If you don't do that first, you'll get the wrong answer. Okay, so what we do is 4 times 3 is 12. Then we add 2 and we get 14. Easy peasy, right? So easy. Now, what if you have something like this, where you've got a numerator and a denominator? If we write it like this, then what we do is we find the value of the numerator first, and then we find the value of the denominator. And then we divide last, which is weird because if it's all in a straight line, we do all the multiplication and division first, and then we add. So it's a little weird because it's like this, but that's how we do it. Now, I'm going to do it like this just to show you. So 4 times 3 is 4 times 3 is 12 plus 2 is 14. That's like the problem we just did. So 14 on top. Now on the bottom we have negative 7 plus 5, so we have negative 2, and the answer here is going to be negative 7. Now I want you to look at all these numbers and imagine the problem is written in a different way. Now it's like this. Actually, these numbers are a little bit different, but it's a similar type of problem. You can see how it's similar, except for this time, there's not a big numerator and a big denominator. There's just this division problem in the middle of it. When the division problem is in the middle of it like that, you can imagine that it's the same thing as doing like this, 14 divided by 2 like that. And then you would be able to see that you do the multiplication and the division first. So don't get confused just because it's written in a weird way. You are going to, in this case, we are going to do the multiplication and division first. Okay, so what we do is let's simplify this part. 14 over 2 is going to be 7. Now let's simplify this part. 3 times 6 is going to be 18. And now everything we have left is adding and subtracting. So we're just going to go left to right. So 4 plus 7 is 11. And then take away 18, and the answer is negative 7. Okay. So if you see something that is really long, like this, let me show you. 6 plus 3 times 6 divided by 2 minus 6 times 2. What you do is first you do multiplication and division. So we're going to do this first, 3 times 6, then we do 6 divided by 2, and then we do 6 times 2. And at the end, we do all the addition and the subtraction. So if you have a long problem like this, this is the rule. You start with multiplication and division, and you go left to right. Then you do addition and subtraction, but remember we don't call it subtraction in this book. We do algebraic addition, even if you're adding a negative number. For example, let's do this problem now. Let's go through and see what we're going to do first. It's kind of like finding the hidden nucleus. I'm going to start with this. 6 plus 18, and then I'm just going to bring everything else down. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is 18 divided by 2. So that's going to be 6 plus 9 minus 6 times 2. Then I'm going to do the next bit of multiplication, which is that. 6 times 2 is 12. So all of that simplifies to 6 plus 9 minus 12. And the answer is going to be 3, because now we just go from left to right. 6 plus 9 is 15, minus 12 is 3. Okay, now normally they're not going to write a problem like this, because who would do that? Only a serial killer, like we saw at the beginning, or maybe a parent or a serial killer. Most likely it's going to be written like this. This is the same problem. Remember, we did 3 times 6 first, and then we divided by 2. Then this is subtraction, so you leave that till the end. And you do this. So let's try this problem and make sure we get the same answer. Here we start with 3 times 6. That's going to simplify to 18. Then we look left to right. This division happens in order from left to right. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now, all we have left is this. When we look left to right, we see that this is the next multiplication. So instead of 6 times 2, I'm going to put 12 here. And because that's a single number, I can get rid of those. Now I have 6 plus 9 minus 12. And I get 3. Same thing as before. Okay, cool. Super awesome. That's fun. It's nice to have those rules, huh? Okay, speaking of rules, we're going to do a few more rules, which is the products of signed numbers. First of all, a little joke here, just to kind of, we've been working hard. Apple Music made Phil Collins look like Voldemort. Look, I don't know if that's real. I wonder if we can like recreate that, but he actually does look like Voldemort, doesn't he? Oh my goodness, that's funny. Okay, so remember, you have to remember this, that the concept of a negative number is actually the opposite of. So for example, 2 is read as the number 2. What about negative 2? This is read as the opposite of 2, which is this. Now we have 2 negative signs. The opposite of 2 is this. Now when we have 3 negative signs, it's the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of 2, which is this. If we have 4 negative signs, the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of 2, which is this. Why did we just go through that? Because look at the pattern. Look at the pattern. Positive 2, negative 2, positive 2, negative 2, positive 2. That pattern is going to come in handy, because when we start with one negative number, if we have only one negative number, it's negative. But if you have 2 negative numbers that you multiply together, it's positive. If you have 3 negative numbers that you multiply together, it's negative. 4 negative numbers that we multiply together, we're back to positive. 5 negative numbers, we're back to negative. And you can see that there's a pattern here. If we have 2 negative numbers, it's positive. If we have 3 negatives, it's negative. It switches back and forth. 4 negatives make a positive, 5 negatives make a negative. So if it's an even number, it's going to be positive. If it's an odd number, it's going to be negative. Now we can say our rules. If you are multiplying an even number of negative numbers, the answer is going to be positive. If you're multiplying together an odd number, the answer is going to be negative. Let's try this. All we have to do here, we don't have to do the answer. We just have to say if it's positive or negative. Here's 1 negative number, 2 negative numbers, 3 negative numbers. The rules say that since there's an odd number of negatives, the answer is going to be negative. And it is, the answer is negative 1056 if you did that in your calculator. All right, let's do another example. All you have to do here is say if the answer is going to be positive or negative. So let's count the total number of negative numbers. Here's 1, 2. Ooh, that is two negative numbers, so that's an even number. An even number is positive. Okay? How do we remember that? Maybe remember that it's odd or it's weird to be negative. It's odd to be negative. Okay,